After talking about the issue related to the prayer timings, Al-Akhdari rahimahullah goes on to talk about the issues are the timings when praying Nafilah, meaning praying your prayers other than the prayers, every prayer other than your fard prayer, we call them Nafilah, supererogatory prayers, when they're considered prohibited to be prayed. So he mentions the first one, وَلَا تُسَلَّ نَافِلَةٌ بَعْدَ صَلَاةِ الصُّبْحِ إِلَى إِرْتِفَاعِ الشَّمْسِ. It is not allowed to pray Nafilah after praying the subh prayer up until the sun, up until sunrise. So after you pray your subh prayer, it is prohibited for a person to pray a Nafilah until sunrise. So after your Fajr prayer, to pray any Nafilah is makruh before the sun rises, but during sunrise it's haram. And the reasons why it's haram during sunrise, because a person who prays during at sunrise is as if it's resembling the people who worship the sun. So after subh, before the sunrise, it is only makruh. But during sunrise, at the time of sunrise, then it is considered to be haram, and that is until the sunrise. Then once the sun is fully risen, then it is permissible again for a person to pray Nafilah. So that's the first one that Al-Akhdari mentions. And the second one that he mentions, وَبَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ إِلَى صَلَاةِ الْمَغْرِبِ. It is disliked to pray Nafilah after praying Asr until Maghrib. So after a person prays their Asr, they shouldn't pray any Nafilah. It's disliked, and that is going to be disliked all the way until Maghrib. So according to the Maliki method, we do not have any sunnahs before Maghrib. وَبَعْدَ طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ إِلَّا الْوِرْدَ لِنَائِمٍ عَنْهُ. It is also disliked to pray Nafilah after the sun, after the Tulu al-Fajr, meaning after Fajr has come in, إِلَّا الْوِرْدَ لِنَائِمٍ عَنْهُ. So what he's saying here is, for example, if a person prays tahajjud and so on and so forth at nighttime, a person has nighttime prayers, and then the time for Fajr comes in. As soon as Fajr comes in, there's only two prayers that are permissible. To pray your rak'atayn for Fajr, your rak'atay for what we call rak'atay al-Fajr, and your fard prayer, which is your subh prayer. Anything other than that is not is disliked to be prayed. So for example, let's just say you didn't pray tahajjud, or you didn't pray your witr, your shafi and your witr, and you wake up and the adhan goes off for Fajr. You're not supposed to pray your tahajjud or your witr, but you're only supposed to pray your rak'atay al-Fajr, the two Fajr rak'ahs, and your salat al-subh, the obligatory prayer. But Al-Akhdari says, وَبَعْدَ طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ إِلَّا الْوِرْدَ لِنَائِمٍ عَنْهُ. There is an exception to the rule in this case. We're going to say if a person generally has the habit of praying tahajjud or praying their shafi and the witr as a customary norm, and they happen to wake up late, then we'll say, because this person has a norm, then we're going to exempt them from the dislike of performing the rule. And so that means it's permissible for him, as long as he has enough time, to pray his shafi and his witr, or to pray whatever his wird it is. The word wird here means the customary, his habit of prayer that he prays in the night prayer. So when we say a wird, for example, today, in later times, the people's wird, for example, is saying certain types of dhikr. In the early times, the people's wird was a certain amount of prayers that they pray at a specific time of the day, which in most cases was tahajjud. So what he's referring to here, in terms of wird, he's generally referring to tahajjud. So if a person wakes up late for his tahajjud and Fajr already came in, he's exempted from the rule in that it is allowed for him to pray his wird, then pray his rak'atay al-Fajr, these two Fajr rak'ahs, and then pray his subh. Then he moves on and says, وَعِنْدَ جُلُوسِ الْإِمَامِ الْجُمْعَةِ عَلَى الْمِنْبَرِ. It is not permissible for a person to pray any nafilah once the imam sits on the minbar for Jummah. That's what Al-Akhdari mentions, but according to the Maliki method, they're going to say as soon as the imam comes out. So as soon as the imam comes out and is visual for Jummah, for example, the imam comes out of his office and he's walking towards the minbar, as soon as you see the imam, even before he gets on the minbar, then it is not, it is considered disliked, or it's not permissible for a person to pray any nafilah. So according to the Maliki method, if you were to walk inside the masjid and during the khutbah and the person who's giving the khutbah is already speaking, you don't pray rak'atayn like the Shafis, but you sit right down without praying any nafilah prayers. Or tahiyatul masjid, or the 2 rak'ahs for the masjid. You don't do any of that, but you sit down and you pray you sit down and you pay attention to what the person giving the sermon is saying, because during Jummah it's obligatory to pay attention to what he's saying, meaning that it's not permissible to talk during Jummah. So that's the meaning وَعِنْدَ جُلُوسِ الْإِمَامِ الْجُمْعَةِ, at the time that the imam sits, the imam of Jummah sits on the minbar. And it is also disliked وَبَعْدَ الْجُمْعَةِ حَتَّى يَخْرُجَ مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ, and it is also disliked for a person to pray nafilah after Jummah until he leaves the masjid. So the practice of the Malikis is that a person doesn't, after Jummah, he shouldn't pray his nafilah until he leaves the mosque. So after Jummah, he's going to go home, and when he leaves the masjid to go home or to go to another place, then he should pray his sunnah there, or go outside of the masjid, to the back of the masjid, outside of the prayer hall, and pray your nafilah there. One of the reasons why a person shouldn't pray their nafilah in the masjid, number one, because it mentioned in the Quran that after a person is done there, after Jummah is done, فَسْعُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. فَسْعُوا is in order to flee from the masjid, meaning leave the masjid. فَسْعُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. And also, one of the other things that it causes is, for example, after Jummah, people have places to go, they have things to do. So when a lot of people stand up to pray nafilah, then it causes the people in the masjid, they can't leave because they don't want to walk in front of you for prayer. So if people are in the front row and you have, for example, 30 sufuf, and everybody gets up and prays nafilah, then people can't leave the masjid as they like. They have to sit and wait for people to finish their prayer, and so there's a type of difficulty that you cause for people to leave the masjid. And that's the end of the section concerning prayer times that Al-Akhdari mentions. And another point that he doesn't mention is that in terms of making up in terms of the times in which it's disliked to pray nafilah, the reason why Al-Akhdari mentions nafilah is because, and he doesn't mention fard, because making up fard prayers can be done at any time. For example, here we mentioned the things at specific times. It's not permissible for a person to pray nafilah, but in terms of make-up prayers, making up qada, then you're obligated to make it ASAP, as soon as possible, even during Jummah, or during sunrise. At any time you're obligated to make your qada, and there is no dislike time for a person to make his qada. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.